So normally I would give you guys a pregame video right now. This would be the Louisiana Monroe scouting report, a little trash talk, and a score prediction. But I think there are bigger fish to fry at the Texas A&M football program right now than previewing a game versus Louisiana Monroe. There's a huge elephant in the room. It's not even an elephant in the room, it's spoken. An elephant in the room is kind of an unspoken issue, an unspoken dilemma. But most people are falling off board with Jimbo Fisher right now. And I had always feared that that would be the case after a week 2 loss versus Miami after the 5-7 season. A lot of people had already fell off. I would say it was probably 50-50 before. Now it's more like 3/4 of the fan base are totally done with Jimbo. I have been the biggest Jimbo supporter even through 2021. I was going to give him a chance through 2022 just because of the youth, the injuries. But to see these issues persist, to see what seemed to be preventable downfalls on the team round their heads around the corner time and time again, there's no choice but to point fingers at someone. I don't think anybody has done less with more at a major program with such expectations as Jimbo Fisher's first 5 years at Texas A&M. Now, the first 3 years at A&M, not terrible. You know, maybe we had hoped that they got to 10 wins in one of those first 2 seasons, 18 and 19. A lot of promise in the year 18. Jimbo didn't have his players yet. Had a couple of signature wins, home versus Kentucky, the 7 overtime game versus LSU. Lots of good things coming out of that 18 season. In 19, Texas A&M played a top 2 team 4 times in the season, lost all of those, and then lost a very disappointing game versus Auburn. In our 2020 season, the season that we all point to, that we think Jimbo can emulate, that we think Jimbo is capable of, that this A&M program is capable of, that 2020 season is now starting to feel like more of an outlier, and it doesn't feel like the norm. The COVID season. Yeah, I hate when people call it the COVID season. It seems like it's just kind of like a backhanded, it discredits the team that year because they call it the COVID year. That means there's some built-in excuses as to why A&M was able to win so many games. And you know what? A&M was really good on the road that year. And since then, A&M has like won two true road games, something like that. One versus Colorado where they almost lost. And that wasn't actually a true road game. It was a Colorado home game, but it was at the Broncos Stadium, and the Aggies filled half of that thing up. A&M's lost 7 in a row on the road now. Now, I don't think losing to Miami damns Jimbo. I don't think it's a condemning loss. But I think it's a terrible, terrible sign for what I consider the measuring stick for this season. And we could have probably stomached it a lot better if it wasn't so preventable in a lot of ways. Scheme, player discipline in terms of tackling. But now we're left in this space where you play Monroe next week. You're not going to get any true answers versus Louisiana Monroe. Louisiana Monroe barely beat Army in week 1 in an upset. They won by 4 points, but then they only beat Lamar by 10 points last week. They have no passing game. I think they're dead last or bottom 5 in passing in the country. A&M should be able to handle and probably cover the 36.5 point spread versus Monroe. So we're left not getting like a definitive answer the next week how they're going to rebound. Obviously, we want to see them perform well, and I think they will. But then you have your SEC slate starting right after, so we're not going to really learn much until Auburn, Arkansas. And I'm here to suggest that Jimbo is bottomed out. That this is the bottom. This is the back against the wall of all backs against the wall. Jimbo has 4 games to define his future at Texas A&M, or even as an FBS head coach, because I don't know where he would go after such a debacle here at A&M if things continue trending downward. Obviously, things could turn around. But you have Auburn at home, Arkansas, neutral site Jerry World, and then Alabama at home. You have 3 games to prove that you were able to adjust, adapt, self-reflect, and fix the issues on this team. Obviously, we all heard Jimbo's press conference on Monday, him calling DJ Durkin a great coach. He knows what he's doing. I think those were the exact words he used. A lot of Aggies are pretty pissed off about those words after the performance we saw by the defense versus Miami. Understandably so. Jimbo has never been great in press conference. He's never said what we want him to say. He never will. That's not his thing. Jimbo does not want to. Jimbo has never been one to reveal the inner workings of the program. He's never been one to call players out, call coaches out. Everything is positive. You have to read between the lines to really hear what he's saying, but even then, you're not going to get much. You're going to have to see it on the field. Now, in my last video, I compared this downfall versus Miami to the early downfall in 2020 where Texas A&M was able to rebound and have their best season under Jimbo Fisher. Now, that's still on the table. A&M could rebound if they fix these issues, find ways to get pressure on the quarterback, clean up the tackling, and many will argue, and I've argued, I think I said this in a previous video this year, that you can't fix tackling over the course of the year. You're either a good tackling team or you're a subpar tackling team. You could probably fix it a little bit, but you're not going to be a bad tackling team and then all of a sudden become a great tackling team. So our hope was that that was a bad night at the office versus Miami. It's a small sample size. It's not a big enough sample size to say that this team is a terrible tackling team. But where we do need to see improvement right away is for this defense, this defensive coordinator, to find ways to collapse the pocket, to confuse offensive lines, to get pressure on quarterbacks, to give this secondary a chance. This secondary did lose two of its upperclassmen, what would be senior leaders in Jalen Jones and Antonio Johnson this year. But even then, we were confident in this secondary's physicality, the experience that the young guys gained in 2022, and just the level of player that you're fielding out there, especially at safety and nickel. Now, corner, we had question marks, but Josh DeBerry is good enough to fill that void. Tyreek Chappelle, we expected a leap. We expected some steps forward. I don't know if we've seen that yet. So that'll be another thing where we really want to see that get hammered out, get fixed going forward. But the main thing will be finding pressure and finding the discipline to form tackle and not just try to nudge people with your shoulder to get them onto the ground. I would argue that that's all coaching. I think we know that this personnel is capable of being at least a good defense that's not giving up 48 points. If you're giving up 48 to Miami, you can give up 48 to a lot of teams on this schedule. Now, the offense has improved. We're happy about the offense. I think one of the best things Jimbo has done in his tenure here was hiring an offensive coordinator. And we saw in Miami, Jimbo didn't have his encyclopedia Bible in his hands. He had nothing in his hands. Maybe he had a notebook or something. But he was attentive during the game. He looked like what a head coach should look like in a game. And that is overseeing the team. But we have to question what's going on with him as a CEO if this defense is able to draw up a game plan that was so lackluster versus Miami. We have to question the hire of DJ Durkin at least 14 games into his tenure. DJ Durkin's back is also against the wall right now. And obviously it all reflects back onto the man that hired him, the man that okays everything now as a CEO. What's the response? Where do we go from here? That's going to define the rest of Jimbo's tenure here. Because if A&M goes out and loses to Auburn or Arkansas, you're losing. You've lost the fan base. I mean, you've already pretty much lost most of the fan base. I would say it's recoverable right now, as much as you guys don't want to believe it. If he does pull one out of the hat and wins these next 4 games, I think we'll feel okay going forward. Because the Miami loss, as much as it sucks, as much as it was always going to suck, if you're somehow able to come out of it, it is an out-of-conference game. And the SEC West does look like it can be had this year. It does look like it's up for grabs. On paper, it is recoverable. But how are we feeling about it? You know what I feel good about? I feel good about the personnel on this team. I feel good that this roster still has the ceiling of an 11-win roster. I think it always had that ceiling. I don't think that changes after Miami in terms of just the roster's ceiling. But will the coaches self-reflect enough to make the necessary changes? Will they make the necessary depth chart moves, if those are necessary? Will they make the scheme adjustments? Defensively, they are necessary. DJ Durkin has been a sit-back, bend-don't-break defense for a year and 2 games now. And versus the caliber of quarterback that A&M faces at times, including Tyler Van Dyke, it ain't going to cut it. It's not going to cut. It obviously didn't cut it. That was the fatal flaw of this game. You're more aggressive. You make Tyler Van Dyke work against a blitz. You make him run around. You overload one side, get him pressure, make him roll out, make him run. He wasn't necessarily a mobile quarterback. He wasn't a mobile quarterback. That seems like a very obvious thing to do against that type of player. It didn't happen. That's a big red flag. I mean, huge. You didn't make what I think was like the home run schematic play. Do you guys agree with that? Will they adjust? Everyone says Jimbo is stubborn. He sounds stubborn based on how he talks in interviews, how he talks in the press conferences. He sounds like everything's okay, just execute better. But I don't think he would really tell us anything he was going to do, any differences. If he called out DJ Durkin, if he had a heart-to-heart with DJ Durkin, if he chewed DJ Durkin out, we're not going to hear about that. The players sound like it's on them, and I think that's the mentality you have to have. You don't want them just pointing fingers at the coaches. You want them to believe that they can improve. You want them to believe that they can get better and make a difference in these future games by their performance alone. That way they're trending upward. They're not getting complacent. They have to believe that, which I understand. I understand that. But what's happening behind closed doors? So these next 4 games, Monroe, Auburn, Arkansas, and yes, I'm including Alabama, which I call it a winnable game, a very winnable game. As we saw last weekend and week 1, they don't have an explosive offense. They don't have a huge passing game. They don't have a dimer at quarterback. They're a running team, an athletic team, a talented team, but so is A&M. That's a winnable game. And I think with what we're faced with, the trend of the program, the trend of Jimbo Fisher, you have to win it. You have to win the next 4. Now, of course, you could lose one, win out, you still feel good, but I don't think that's really on the table. If you're showing that you've lost to Miami like that and then you lose again versus any of these, especially Auburn or Arkansas, you're going to lose more games, 100%. So this is the end, guys. This is the end of the road. I've been the biggest Jimbo supporter, as I said. I like him. I like him as a dude. Hate his press conferences, but I think he's a pretty good dude. But it doesn't seem like he's taken this football program the right direction outside of recruiting. And guess what? It's a very tempting move to make. Someone has the coordinates out near Dime Box in the middle of nowhere. The buyout money's buried out there somewhere. Someone has those coordinates, and someone's going to release those numbers if this thing keeps trending downward. And it lines up nicely because Mike Elko, he's about to become the hottest name in the coaching market in the last 3 or 4 years. Head coaching market, that is. So this is it, guys. This is it. I mean, if he wins the next 4, I think a lot of us are going to be back on board with the season, with Jimbo giving him at least a chance to finish this thing out. But I think a lot of the signs are not good at all. Just the issues persisting, inability to get it right. As the CEO, which we've been hoping he would become, big CEO error in letting that defensive game plan come out versus Miami. So with that, I'll give you my score prediction for Louisiana Monroe. I say A&M covers. You know what? Let's go 52-10 again. We're going to get another 52-10 win versus Monroe. I think this offense is in a good place to trend upward with Petrino at the helm. With Connor Wigman, he's going to get better week to week. I think this offensive line, not where it needs to be, but I don't think it's as far off as it was last year. I think within this next 3-game stretch, we could see this offensive line be very serviceable, become very serviceable and reliable. I think pass protection will get better. I think they'll get better at making line calls. Physically, they're not far off at all. It's those calls at the line. It's missing blitzers. And as Jimbo said, that comes back on the quarterback too. and I think that'll get hammered out. I think this offense is in a good place, but if it's not one thing, it's the other. It's the defense now. So 52-10 versus Monroe. I think they'll come out, and they'll come out on a mission after that embarrassing performance defensively. I think the offense will continue striving forward. But then the timer really begins versus Auburn, Arkansas, and then, yes, Alabama. So, guys, do you agree? Is this the end? I think all of you will. This is the last chance. Everything is still to play for. Will they go get it? If you like this video, if you like this content, please subscribe. Please like this video. Comment. Vent. How do you feel about Jimbo, guys? I want to hear what you have to say. I'm all ears now. With that, I'll see you on the next one, guys. Thanks, and gig 'em.